Right now, your phone holds more entertainment than an entire civilization could have imagined. You have endless videos, games, music, podcasts, and millions of people talking online every second of the day. And yet somehow, after scrolling for 10 minutes, you still end up staring at the ceiling thinking there's nothing to do. Which raises a strange question almost nobody asks. What happened when the first humans got bored? Not kings in castles, not Romans in giant cities, not even the Egyptians building pyramids. Go back further, 100,000 years, maybe 200,000, before writing existed, before books, movies, songs, or even language in the form we know today. Imagine a small group of humans sitting around a fire after sunset. No phones, no stories written down, no internet, no television, just darkness, silence, and time. What did their minds do with it? For decades, scientists assumed boredom didn't exist back then. Early humans were thought to be trapped in constant survival mode, hunting animals, finding water, escaping predators. According to that theory, every second of life was occupied by the struggle to stay alive. But modern anthropology shattered that idea. In 1966, anthropologist Marshall Solins published research that completely changed how scientists viewed ancient human life. After studying the Kungsan of the Kalahari Desert, one of the closest living examples to early hunter-gatherer societies, he discovered something shocking. They only spent around 15 to 20 hours a week gathering food and surviving. That's less than many modern teenagers spend on homework. The rest of the time, they rested, they talked, they wandered, they sat around doing absolutely nothing. And that changes everything. Because if early humans had long stretches of empty time, then boredom may have become one of the most powerful forces in human history. Boredom may have pushed humans to invent stories, create music, paint on cave walls, worship gods, and eventually build civilizations. In other words, your restless brain might not be a modern problem at all. It might be the oldest human instinct ever. The question is what happened when they did get bored. The first answer is surprisingly simple. They played. But play sounds small and unimportant until you realize it may have helped build human civilization itself. In 2010, archaeologist Francesco De Rico and his team studied tiny shells discovered inside Blombos Cave. The shells were around 75,000 years old, and each one had a carefully drilled hole through the center. Many were coated in red ochre. These weren't tools, they weren't weapons, they weren't food, they were beads. Jewelry. That means somebody 75,000 years ago sat inside a cave and decided to decorate themselves for no survival reason at all. And that is incredible when you think about how difficult it would have been. Drilling through a shell with nothing but sharpened stone tools would have taken hours, maybe even days. No metal, no electricity, no shortcuts, just patience and time. And they still did it anyway. Why? Because once survival was handled, the human brain started looking for something else to do. That may have been the moment art was born, not from necessity, from boredom. The same pattern appears with music. In 2008, researchers excavating a cave in southern Germany discovered a flute carved from the wing bone of a vulture. It had carefully placed finger holes and was around 40,000 years old. Think about that timeline for a second. No agriculture, no cities, no governments, no written language. And yet someone looked at a bird bone and thought, what if this could make sound? So they carved it, tested it, played it. Not because they had to survive, but because they had a free afternoon and a curious mind. Neuroscientist Daniel Levitin believes music may actually be older than language itself. Long before humans could form complex sentences, our brains were already wired for rhythm and melody. Because rhythm is pattern, and pattern recognition was one of the most important survival skills early humans ever developed. But boredom didn't just create art or music. It may have created something even more important: imagination. Think about what boredom actually is for a second. You cannot feel bored unless you understand time. To be bored, your brain has to recognize that this moment is lasting too long, that something else could be happening, that the future exists and could be different from the present. In a strange way, boredom is proof that the human mind learned how to imagine things that do not exist yet. Animals don't experience boredom the way humans do. A dog waiting for its owner is not sitting there questioning life. It's simply waiting. It does not imagine alternate futures or wonder what else it could be doing. But a human sitting beside a fire 100,000 years ago, that's different. At some point, after the hunt was over and the night became quiet, the mind started wandering. What if tomorrow's hunt fails? What made that sound outside the cave? What's beyond those mountains? Where do people go after death? And suddenly, you have the beginning of religion, the beginning of philosophy, the beginning of science. Every massive question humanity has ever asked may have started the exact same way. Someone had too much free time, and their brain refused to stay quiet. In 2013, psychologist Sandy Mann published a fascinating study about boredom and creativity. She gave participants one of the dullest tasks imaginable, copying numbers from a phone book for an extended period of time. Afterward, she tested how creative they were. The results were surprising. The bored participants performed dramatically better on creative tasks than everyone else. Why? Because boredom forces the brain to create its own stimulation. When the outside world becomes repetitive and empty, the mind turns inward. It starts building ideas, stories, fantasies, theories, and the human brain, when left alone long enough, is unbelievably creative. But there was one more thing ancient humans probably did while sitting around those fires at night, and it may have mattered more than all the others combined. They talked, not just about hunting or survival or where to find food. They told stories. Anthropologist Robin Dunbar, the researcher famous for discovering that human social groups naturally stay around 150 people, spent years studying what humans actually talk about when they are not discussing survival or work. His conclusion was surprising. Nearly 65% of human conversation is social gossip. Who said what? Who did what? What happened to someone you both know? At first, this sounds meaningless, but according to Dunbar, it may have been one of the most important developments in human history. Before language, early primates bonded by grooming each other physically. The problem was that grooming only worked one-on-one and took a huge amount of time. Language changed everything. Now, humans could sit around a fire and bond with entire groups at once. They could tell stories, joke, share rumors, and talk about people who were not even there. Trust could spread through conversation instead of physical contact. In a way, civilization itself may have begun simply because humans had free time and started talking to each other. So boredom may have done far more than create entertainment. 75,000 years ago, someone bored inside a cave made a bead. 40,000 years ago, someone else carved a flute from a bird bone. And somewhere between those moments, people started asking deeper questions about death, the stars, and why the world exists at all. Some of those questions became religion. Some became science. Some became philosophy and art. And in many ways, humans are still doing the same thing today. Modern psychology even warns that constantly avoiding boredom can overwhelm the brain. Researchers call this cognitive overload, when every quiet moment is filled with screens, noise, and endless stimulation. The mind loses the space it needs to reflect and create. Ironically, the moments where nothing happens may be the moments where the human brain works best. Modern neuroscience has discovered something fascinating about the human brain. There is a system inside your mind called the default mode network. It becomes active when you are not focused on anything specific, when you are daydreaming, resting, staring out a window, or simply sitting in silence. And strangely enough, this network is deeply connected to creativity, self-reflection, imagination, and empathy. In other words, some of the most important mental processes only happen when the brain is allowed to slow down. For almost 300,000 years, humans lived with long stretches of silence and stillness. Nights around fires, empty landscapes, hours of walking with nothing but thoughts for company. During those quiet moments, the human mind learned to imagine stories, invent tools, create music, and ask questions about life itself. Then, in just the last few decades, everything changed. Now, silence disappears the moment it appears. The second we feel even slightly bored, we reach for a phone. We scroll, watch, Swipe, refresh. Every spare second is filled with stimulation. The modern world has become incredibly good at preventing boredom, but there is a cost to that. When every moment is occupied, the mind never gets the chance to wander naturally. It never fully enters the quiet mental state where ideas connect and creativity forms. Ancient humans didn't fear silence. In many ways, silence was where the human brain did its best work. Think about it. Somewhere 75,000 years ago, a person sat inside a cave with nothing to do and started carving tiny beads from shells. Thousands of years later, another person picked up a bird bone and turned it into a flute. Someone else looked up at the night sky and began wondering why the stars moved the way they did. Those moments changed human history, and all of them began with the same simple thing: a wandering mind. So every time you put your phone down and allow yourself to sit quietly for a few minutes, you are participating in something ancient. You are doing the same thing humans have done for thousands of generations. Boredom was never just emptiness. It may have been the force that made us human in the first place.